This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue. The participants are Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist.
Today, India and the United States held the third 2+2 dialogue in Delhi. India was represented by External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. The U.S. side was represented by the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Mark Esper, and both sides were also assisted by their top military and security officials. We saw press statements being issued by both sides, and they met the Prime Minister in the morning and also the National Security Advisor in the morning today. Ambassador Sajjanhar, when you see this level of cooperation between India and the United States, and we see this 2+2 dialogue which has happened in the morning today, how much of a positive boost is this for the bilateral relationship between India and the United States?
I think this represents a very significant move in taking forward our bilateral relationship. Because if you see the 2+2 mechanism, it started about 3 years ago in 2018. There were very significant decisions that were taken at that meeting. Then last year, the meeting took place in 2019 in Washington, D.C. And right now, for this meeting to be held in Delhi, and for these two very senior leaders to travel all the way from Washington, D.C. to come here and to have this meeting when the pandemic is going on, and also when the presidential election is just about a week away, I think it sends out a very strong message about both the commitment of the United States in having a strong relationship with India and also the substance of the partnership.
We also see that the United States, and especially their stance on China, has been quite blunt and very critical. We found that the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, he very clearly said that there is much work to do for sure, and he talked about the Chinese Communist Party's threats to security and freedom. And he emphasized the role that India and the U.S. has to play to promote peace and stability to the region. Defense Secretary Mark Esper also specified on the Chinese threat in the Indo-Pacific region. How do you see this emphasis that the U.S. has placed on China, on countering the rise of China, which has been very aggressive, and we have seen what happened in Galwan Valley? How do you see the U.S. approach, which seems to be also very blunt in taking on China?
No, you're absolutely right, because I think two or three things, in context of what you've just mentioned. One, the United States has identified China as a systemic rival, not only in the present context of what is happening post-pandemic, its aggressiveness and belligerence in South China Sea, also against India in the Ladakh sector. I think overall, globally, it is looking at China as a systemic rival that is competing with the United States for world leadership, for global supremacy. And in that context, Mike Pompeo has been particularly vocal against Xi Jinping and against the Chinese Communist Party. And the same thing was done by him when the Quad meeting took place in Tokyo on the 6th of October. The same thing he said today also at the 2+2 meeting. So he leaves no holds barred as far as the condemning and criticizing China is concerned. And he said that China is no friend of transparency, it is no friend of democracy, thereby implying that China is out there to impose its own authoritarian order, its own authoritarian system over the world. And Mark Esper also said exactly the same thing, that as far as the region of Indo-Pacific is concerned, China is out there to claim hegemony and to claim control over that. So this partnership between India and the United States for a free, open, inclusive, peaceful and prosperous Indo-Pacific, that is something that brings these two countries together.
You mentioned that we had the Quad meeting in Tokyo a little while back. Quad has also been interpreted by many as being a force which will counter the aggression of China. Do you feel that the 2+2 dialogue in Delhi is also an emphasis to the world that the rest of the Asian powers are willing to unite to counter China? And we also see the inclusion of Australia in the Malabar drill. Do you find that this is a coming together of Asian powers for this?
Well, first of all, on the inclusion of Australia in the forthcoming Malabar naval exercises which are to be held in November. I think this is a very welcome move, and this is after 13 years that all these four countries will be getting together for these naval exercises. So I think that sends out also a very clear and a very strong message to China that earlier it was able to scuttle this grouping. If you remember 2007 it had started, but when China expressed its displeasure, then Kevin Rudd, the Australian Prime Minister at that time, he had wilted under this criticism of China and had withdrawn from the Quad. But not this time, notwithstanding the economic coercion and threats that China has been mouthing against Australia, they have stood very firm. Now, as far as the Quad is concerned, the United States, of course, is the preeminent power in that. But if you were to see which is the next one, obviously it is India in terms of its land, in terms of territorial area, population, size of economy, its military strength, etc. This is, of course, the second most important power. So the fact that India and the United States are cooperating gives a huge boost as far as the Quad is concerned. Now, your question whether that Asian powers are coming together, I think that is still, in my view, work in progress. We have seen that the Japanese Prime Minister, after taking over from his predecessor Shinzo Abe, who did so much to bring out Quad in the shape and structure that it is. You would recall that in 2007 when he had come to India, he had spoken about the Indo-Pacific as an arc of freedom and prosperity around the Eurasian continent. So Prime Minister Suga, after having taken over, he is trying to take forward the legacy that has been handed over to him by Prime Minister Abe. And Vietnam was his first country of visit. Indonesia was the second one. And in both the countries, he spoke about the Indo-Pacific and maybe if not completely on all aspects of the Quad, but on certain elements, because Quad is also trying to see what are the areas in which it can work together. So I think there are a number of areas in which Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, and also other powers beyond this region, like Britain, like France, like Germany, they could also be co-opted into the Quad. So I think we'll really have to wait and see as to how this works. I would also like to draw to your attention that during the time of the pandemic, the four countries of the Quad at senior official level, that is at Vice Minister or Foreign Secretary level, they have been in touch with each other in a virtual manner over video conferencing every week. And this Quad has also got itself expanded to include the Republic of Korea, to include Vietnam, and to include New Zealand. So it is Quad Plus that has been coordinating its response to the coronavirus pandemic.
We also found today during the 2+2 talks, we've had the signing of a very long-awaited agreement between India and the US, that is the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, or the BECA, which gives India access to classified geospatial data as well as critical information having significant military applications from the United States. And we also saw that this has been defined as a very significant move by the Defense Minister when he briefed the media after the high-level talks in Hyderabad House today. How do you look at the India-US relationship in security terms? We have seen that in the last few years, both India and the United States, as far as defense and the security cooperation is concerned, we have seen that the relationships have really gone positive and they have taken like a big boost forward. How do you interpret this today as becoming a major part of this bilateral relationship?
If we look at it, it was just 15 years ago that the India-US defense partnership was signed. So today we are celebrating, we are marking the 15th anniversary of that agreement. And the metamorphosis has been truly remarkable. It has been transformational and it is unrecognizable because before 2005 we had barely a few $100 million of trade exchanges in defense items with the United States. Today, the United States has emerged as the second largest defense supplier to India, and it is not only in terms of defense supplies, but the Defense Technology and Trade Initiative that has also been emphasized and underlined. Full consideration and full attention will be given under India's Atmanirbhar program to bring American industries to come here, to invest here, to have development of platforms and systems in India so that the Make in India program is given a forward movement. You mentioned very correctly that this basic exchange and cooperation agreement, this has been pending discussion for a long time. India, because of its idea of strategic autonomy in this sector and the fact that we would be required to share our classified data and information with any outside country, and from there it could find way to our adversaries or to our hostile neighbors. So that has kept us away. But now I think after all pros and cons, we have determined that the benefits that we will get from this are much more than any compromise that we might have to make.
Mr. Sajanhar, as you mentioned about our neighborhood, about Pakistan and the cross-border terrorism that has continued from the Pakistani side, during the talks that India and the United States have had since yesterday and today, we also found that when the External Affairs Minister met the U.S. Secretary of State, the indications are that Afghanistan was discussed, and India also made it clear that the cross-border terrorism which is coming from Pakistan has to stop. How do you feel that the U.S. can play a more positive role? Maybe it can push Pakistan a little more to stop its cross-border activities across the border. And also as far as Afghanistan is concerned, because India has major stakes in Afghanistan, how does the withdrawal of the U.S. forces and the outcome of the Afghan peace talks, how can the U.S. then help India maintain peace in its regional security environment?
Afghanistan was discussed, and the joint press statement that has been issued by both the sides, there is a very clear reference to Afghanistan in that joint statement. Also, you would recall that in the press statement, the very brief press statement that all the ministers presented, and in that the External Affairs Minister, he spoke about India's very strong interests as far as peace and stability in Afghanistan is concerned. He also spoke about the fact that cross-border flow of terrorists is completely unacceptable. I think India and the United States are basically on the same page as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Both of us want peace, both of us want stability, a democratic system. Also the fact that the gains that have been made in the country over the last 19 years, that they should be preserved, they should not be lost, particularly as far as democratic rights are concerned, as far as promotion of human rights, promotion of rights of women and girls are concerned. And India has always maintained that it should be an Afghan-led, Afghan-controlled and an Afghan-owned peace process. And I think on all these there is similarity, there is a total convergence of views between India and the United States. The challenge is how to take it forward. I would say that as far as the United States is concerned, it has also been moving in a direction which it is compelled to do because of its own domestic politics, because President Trump was required as per his commitment to bring back the troops from Afghanistan. But the United States has been keeping India in the loop and always briefing us as to what the discussions have been going on, whether it is with the Taliban or with Pakistan. We have brought to them the extreme importance of peace and stability in India, and also any government that comes to in Afghanistan, they will also require the development assistance that India has provided to that country, which is more than $3 billion. You are aware of the Pune-Khumri transmission lines, Zarang-Telaram connectivity road, the Parliament House, the Afghan-India Friendship Dam, and so many others. In all the provinces of the country, we have put in small maximum impact projects which will have a benefit for the common people. So whether it is healthcare, education, hospitals, schools, across the board, India has provided assistance to Afghanistan. So I think India will continue to play a very significant role in the work that will go on as far as Afghanistan is concerned.
And in the coming days, we will continue our discussion on the India-US bilateral relationship and also on the regional security issues, which includes Pakistan and Afghanistan. For today, we bring this discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue. The participants were Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our website newsonair.com. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.